Hey everybody, welcome to the HSA podcast. Today I have one of my really good friends, mentor, and just somebody I really cherish in my life. I don't think I've ever said that to him in real life, so this is his first time he's looking at me like, what? You thought that? But this right here is Scott McClelland. He is the head coach at Noblesville. He's a lot of people in my circle are very shy. He will be in the Hall of Fame as a coach. He's a good coach. He runs a great program. He was at Morristown when we won a state championship, and now he has been consistently ranked in the 4A level in the top 5 ever since he got there at Noblesville. He does a phenomenal job. We worked together for 3 years, and so he knows all about my little ADHD tendencies and how I am as a person, but that's why we love each other. Coach Mac, first off, thank you for being on the podcast. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
I just want to know, first off, you were born in Indiana, Yorktown.
I was born in Indianapolis, but grew up in the Yorktown, Muncie area.
Okay, so you're a little Yorktown, Muncie guy. Are you Muncie Central?
I went to Yorktown, but I played in the Muncie sectional, and had my high school career ended by one Bonzie Wells. So
Bonzie Wells did it?
Yes.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, he was a junior, I was a senior, and they beat us in the sectional. First round of the sectional my senior year, and
what'd you hold him to?
He scored a lot more than I did.
Just a little bit, 1 or 2?
Yeah.
So, and then after that, you went to Ball State?
I went to a small school, Ancilla College, up by Plymouth, Indiana, and just really wanted to be a part of a team. Obviously I still wanted to play, but I wasn't that good, and just wanted to be a part of a team and find something, and was fortunate enough to find that. And then, it like a lot of things, I think the realization of it comes, so just came back and decided to be a student, go to Ball State, and get involved in coaching.
Yeah, met your wife?
A few years later.
Yep,
Ball State. Years later. Yep.
So after that, you leave college, and then where do you go next?
Well, when I first started coaching high school basketball, I was actually coaching on the girls' side. I was an assistant at Yorktown High School, and then I left there and I got the head coaching job at Wapahani, I would have stayed, but the problem was we had just gotten married. I moved to Indianapolis, and I was having to finish my student teaching. So something had to give, and so ultimately I wasn't able to stay at Wapahani. I made that decision, and
on the girls' side or the boys' side?
On the girls' side.
Okay.
And then finished up with student teaching. Kind of got to help her out around just the girls and the boys program, and watch practice and do some different things at Muncie Central. And then from there I went to Blue River on the boys side as an assistant, to Cathedral as the head freshman coach and varsity assistant. And then I took a 1-year job at Cecina, which was a school that was predominantly football, and we were able to win a sectional that year. And I got the head coaching job at Morristown, and spent 7 years there, and then made the transition to Brebeuf, and would have stayed at Brebeuf, but unfortunately my assistant AD position was eliminated after my second year. So then I ended up going to Western Boone High School. That's kind of a long story, because that was a job that I originally kind of pulled my name out of, and it just it was a good experience, but ultimately just a really much more school involved with football. And I had the opportunity to go back to Morristown the year before I decided to go back, and looking back, I probably should have went back the year before, but it's all worked out. Went back to Morristown for 6 years, and then ultimately now starting my 5th year at Noblesville. So this is year 23 as a head coach, and year 31 as overall. So been doing this a while.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, and you have a lot of good stories. It's funny because I know that you're not much of a storyteller, but then every now and then you're just like, you'll be on the bus, you're like, that reminds me of this one time. And then you go on this rant and all the assistants are looking at you like, did he just say that? Like, yeah, like, and then after that we won, and then we had to run to the bus and blah, blah, blah. I absolutely love that. So you're going on year 23 of coaching. Reflecting back on year one, even from coaching, even you said 31 total?
31 total. They're starting 31 and 23 as a head boys coach.
So what has changed as far as, you could talk about yourself, you could talk about the culture, you could talk about the kids. What has been your biggest notice in a change from 31 all the way to now?
Well, I don't think kids have changed. I really don't. I think society's changed. But I don't think the kids have really changed that much. I still think kids are kids, and you care about them, and you show them you care about them. They're gonna do, for the most of the time, they're gonna do what you ask. And but I just think society's changed, and some of that's not been for the better. I think one of the changes. Just the cultural aspect. I don't think I realized how important that was when I first started coaching. I think when you're first starting coaching, you're constantly trying to prove to everybody that you know what you're doing, and every game is almost borderline life and death. Yes. And because heaven forbid you lose, and then everybody thinks you have no idea what you're doing, and all that. But I think that's probably something I've really been able to improve on, grow on, focus more on. It's just how important that is. I think the other thing is, I had a guy tell me this: you'll become a different coach once you become a parent, and he was right. And so I think that probably helped with some maturity stuff, as well as the cultural piece and aspect. Like I said, I think when you're younger, you're trying so hard to prove to people that you know what you're doing, and you're trying to win every game. And when you don't, it's like it's the end of the world. And I'll never forget. It was my second stint at Morristown, and it was the year before you and I coached together. We had a solid foundation, but we ended up going to Jeffersonville to play in a tournament. And basically, the first game, they tried to pair you up with somebody comparable in schools. But after that, based off how the brackets are, and we went 1-3. And I remember, I would have never have done that as a younger coach. Just the fear of, oh my God, we lost 3 games, And it was the best thing we did, because we played 2 big schools out of Kentucky, and we played them tough. I think they kind of took us a little for granted, and some of the kids that you obviously got to be familiar with were, they were good, and we gained a ton of experience and just confidence by going down there and playing in that. And I remember thinking I would have never done that in my first 4 years, 5 years as a coach. Fear, 1-3, oh no, heaven forbid, blah, blah, blah. And, it was just a great learning tool, So I think, but when you ask, what changed, what has changed, I just think society, the expectations of what's placed on kids, but I don't think kids have really changed much in 30 years. I really don't. I mean, I still think that kids are kids, and there's more for them to do now, and there's more detractions and detractors with the whole social media thing. But that's for another day.
No, you're good. And it's interesting because at the facility, at the HSA here, something I see is kids come in and shoot, and the first time they're bad. It's your first time shooting at a high volume. You may go 30 for 100, and you see the red number pop up, and then the parents go off on the kids. You don't, blah, 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 blah. And then the kids don't want to come back. And it's like, well, yeah, they tried something new, and they got ripped. So I mean, think about this as a grown man as you and I are. If I do something and I get ripped, I'm not doing it again.
Right.
And yet we expect kids to be like, oh, you should be excited about going and developing. Why would I be excited about getting ripped again? Like, I barely.
Well, and I think that goes back to the society piece. We don't let anybody fail anymore.
Yeah.
And, I think, like, I tell people this all the time. Like, I want Anna, that's my daughter, to get knocked on her rear, because how's she ever going to learn how to deal with any adversity if it's sunny and 75 and her mom and I are there just to bail her out? Like, I don't want that to happen all the time, but I do want her to get knocked on her ass a couple times so she knows how to pick herself up and deal with adversity. And I just don't think we allow kids to fail. And there's so much, again, this goes back to the society piece. There's so much worry about if they fail, then they're a failure, and that's not the case at all. But we as parents sometimes, and we as in society, we can't just let that happen.
Yeah. I mean, and they're not dead. They're not injured. It's just you lost a game.
Right.
And I remember, I don't know if I told you the story, it was one of your players, I'm not saying his name out of pure respect for him, was in here shooting. And the dad came to me and goes, I don't like his hips. I don't like the way his hips are facing when he shoots. And I'm like, okay. So I walk in there. The kid is shooting 89%. High level three. Boom, 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 boom. And I'm looking at the shot. I look at the dad. I'm like, what do you want? He goes, I don't like his hips. I'm like, okay. He's shooting almost 90%. You want him shooting 105? Like, what's the goal here? And he goes, well, I want his hips to face forward. Well, the ball's going in. I don't care if the ball's going in. I want his hips looking this way. And I looked at him, and this is like a month before the season starts. And I look at the dad, I'm like, I'm not touching that kid's shot. It's good. It's 90%. I'm going to walk away and say, good shot. You may get a high five if you leave, right? And the dad got mad at me, and the kid started crying. And eventually I was at one of your practices, and I caught up with the kid, just catching him. And I was just checking on him. He goes, no one's ever told my dad no. Everybody comes in there and starts ripping me because my dad wants me to do this. So that the player development coach or the trainer thinks that they're impressing everybody by ripping me and telling me that my hips don't look right. And you're the first person to ever say, like, I'm not helping him. Like, he's good. And it was just crazy to think that, like, I mean, he's graduated. I think he was a senior last year. And so, but yeah, it's just one of those, like, I don't think, and going back to you, the society of, like, even if your kid, like, let your kid figure it out.
Right.
Like, and I have 4 kids, and one thing I really gained a lot of respect for you from is that you never pushed your daughter to play. Like, you've encouraged it, you've presented her with the opportunity, but it was never, you have to do this.
No.
And that was one thing I always thought was beautiful, that I think she's playing volleyball now, if I'm right.
Yeah.
But, like, you were mature enough to realize that basketball is your journey, it's your love, but it may not be hers.
Right.
And so that's one thing I do with my kids a lot of, like, we get into it in the house and we say, well, we want the kids to play this. I'm like, well, if he wants to be here, he'll be here. And that blows some minds. They'll be like, what? Like, he has a choice? Like, absolutely has a choice. It's his life.
Right.
And, but yeah, I've always liked the way you do that.
No, I mean, that was funny because we had I told Anna multiple times, like, you don't have to play. You don't have to like basketball just because I like basketball. And when she finally kind of decided to really give it up, there were tears, and we were actually sitting down to eat, and I came back and I was like, what's wrong? And she kind of looked at my wife and kind of looked back, and Sonia said, well, you need to tell him. And she said, Dad, I don't want to play basketball anymore. And I said, are you sure? And she said, yes. I said, okay. I said, but you're going to do something.
Yeah.
I don't care if it's the band or the theater or the arts, volleyball. We're not coming home just looking at our iPads and, staring at our phones all day. I said, you need to be involved in something, and, where you're interacting with people. And I said, I don't care if you don't play basketball. And quite frankly, I think she was really confident in her decision, very at peace in her decision. She did throw out a couple weeks ago, which kind of caught us off guard, that she was like, I might go to the freshman or go to the basketball call-out meeting. And I kind of looked at her like, what? And I said, Anna, I said, you haven't touched the basketball in 3 or 4 years. Like, what makes you think you're just going to show up at the meeting and decide, hey, I'm going to play high school basketball? And I think she thought about it, but then realized that, I think more than anything, her commitment right now is with volleyball and all that.
And it's funny because I find this out a lot. I feel like the parents that are the most pushy are the parents that got cut or never got an opportunity to play. And it's like, well, I don't want my kid to experience that. But I mean, that's your journey that you're trying to push onto the kid. Like, I always find that working with coaches' kids and working with former athletes, players, those are the ones that get it, that say, hey, you know what, let me just do my job. And, they sit in the lobby and they're like, Paul's got it. Like, know, the trainer's got it, the coach has got it, and go from there. So, yeah, that's interesting. I appreciate you sharing that. That's all good stuff right there for any parents listening that, let your kid come up with their own journey.
Right.
So talking about you do a really good job, and one thing I've always respected about you is how you always find the right thing to say at the right time. Like, for example, something may happen, you may wait a couple days, you may not address it, but then 3 days later you'll come back and be like, this is the time to address it, let's have that conversation. And what causes that calmness in you? How are you always finding those right words? I always can see you're deep in thought, but like, you always manage to say the right thing at the right time.
Well, I don't know if I don't know that I agree with that. I certainly know that I've not said the right things plenty of times at the right time. But I will say this: I think when you're dealing with basketball, it's never as good as what you think it is, and it's never as bad as what you think it is. And there's nights where you think, hey, we're pretty good tonight, and then you watch the film, it's like, well, maybe the other team wasn't that good, And then there's other nights you're ready to go dive off a cliff, and it's like, wait a second, hold on, pump the brakes here a little bit. So I think that's always been important. And I think the thing, too, as you learn from the mistakes you made, that you don't know how you played until you watch the film. I mean, really, there's nights, obviously, a kid, hey, in the regional, for example, in 2018, Hayden Landcable scored 46 points. Like, it didn't take somebody real smart to figure out, like, he did all right tonight. But I'm saying, like, the games, so it's always just resonated with me that it's usually better to address the team, win or lose, about that particular game a day or two later, because I think you can be so much more of an effective teacher and so much more of an effective communicator by doing that. Now, have there been nights where you're madder and all bejeebers and you just fly off the handle? Yeah, sure. And there, like I said, there's nights when kids have done well, or one or two kids have done well. But, I think that's the big thing, is it's never as bad as what you think it is, but it's also never as good as what you think it is. And somewhere in the middle, that's usually the underlying truth.
So when you have a freshman come in, and this is something I've absolutely, when I walked into Morristown the first time, I always thought this was just natural. But then after watching you and seeing that you're cultivating this, your culture, and I hate the word culture because it's just so overused and doesn't really mean what it is, but your cohesiveness, your teams all fight for you, you're fighting with them. It's never the coaches up here and you guys are just expected to carry the load. You're carrying the load with them. A freshman coming into your program, what do you expect from them? What do you want them to look like? What do you want them to be prepared for?
Well, you hit on the word culture, and that and bowling are the two most overused and misunderstood words in the English language today, but we'll get on that to another time. I think with freshmen, and I've been fortunate enough to have freshmen who you knew from day one they were going to play varsity basketball. I think of P.J. Thompson, Dylan Landcable,
Trayvon.
Like they were going to play. You knew right away that they were going to play. But I think with freshmen too, there's a fine line. Like, they've got to play. And so many times you see coaches, whether it's basketball or volleyball or soccer, they move a kid up and they're playing a third as a freshman on the varsity. Well, why aren't they playing 3/4 the full game on the JV? And, I think the big thing too there that helps freshmen are your older guys good? And are they good leaders? And are they good for your culture? And that's something I'm not sure that I certainly didn't pay enough attention to it in my younger days. I mean, whereas now I think I focus sometimes more on that than even the X's and O's, or maybe that's why I've got guys to do that stuff. Because I joke one day, there's days of practice now like in Noblesville where I've got so much good help and have been fortunate the last 4 years that I can just see, are they being great teammates? Are they cheering for each other? Are they high-fiving each other? Are they talking to one another? And, that's just a valuable piece. And because I do think that, it probably changed for me. I know one thing that was really profound was when I went to Butler's practice and in their locker room. And this was with their 2010 and 11 teams that went to the national championship. They had huge signs in their locker that said, "Great teams have great teammates." And that's just stuck with me. And that's been, a core principle of the philosophy that we try to, the principles of foundation to success in our program. Are you a great teammate? And it's tough, especially in today's age, man. It is. It's hard. Kids want to play. For example, last year, we had 2 seniors, just phenomenal young men. And they weren't getting to play, and it was bothering me. And we're playing Pike, and they're seniors. They haven't been in the game. And there's a 3-point play, and they're the first 2 to stand up on our bench, and they're clapping. And we got 2 younger kids, they're dressing for the first couple times, and they're clapping, but they're not. So we clip this up. We clip it up and think about something. Those are 2 seniors who haven't been in the game, and they're up clapping. What's wrong with you guys? But again, it was a great. The seniors were such good leaders and good examples. The younger guys couldn't be like, well, hell, I didn't. You're right, man. They didn't get in, and they're up. So I just think that those types of things are things that you just try to learn from and grow from, and probably things I never really, focused on enough. And Aaron Garrett over at Batesville does a clinic, and he didn't do it this year, and I was a little disappointed. And I know one reason why is because there were some other clinics going on, but he does it all around culture. There's no X's and O's, and he's had a handful of guys, and he had Brad Stevens actually, do it from a Zoom type setting last year, and I didn't see it live, but Aaron was able to share it with us. But I went over there, and he asked me to speak, I think 2 or 3 years ago, but it was really interesting to hear some of the guys talk about. It's all culture. It's no rebounding drills. It's no X's and O's. It's no shooting drills. It's just things that they do, and ways that they try to promote their program and build within. And I just think those are things that I was so bad at. Look, I didn't think about it enough. I don't think now, and now I think it's just something that's probably one of the, I guess, my stronger characteristics. Because I don't think our offense is great or our defense is great or we do this great or do that well great. Maybe we do. I don't know, but I just feel like that's one thing, And there's been kids now too that I just. If they're going to be a bad teammate, we just get rid of them.
Yeah.
And I simple as that, no bums. And I tell the guys that, if if you're going to be a bum, I don't, I don't want to crucify kids here, but I mean, there's been some years where I kept kids that looking back, I wish now I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And it may have helped us. But I wasn't smart enough to know, or mature enough to be able to handle it, so that I could have maybe got them to change. So, those are things that I think you just...
But you made a difference, though. You got to look at a kid and say, is this kid going to sacrifice the culture? Is it going to sacrifice the program? Or is this a kid that I can help? And there was a kid that, I don't know if you remember this or not, you incorporated yoga into our preseason and postseason routines for flexibility, core strength, and everything. And I was doing the yoga, and you stepped out of the yoga class, and there was a freshman in there that was goofing around. And this is the kind of culture you had, where they were being completely disrespectful to the teacher, and it was one kid led to another. And then I stopped the yoga class, and you came back, and I'm ripping the kids. And you're like, Paul, how'd you go from yoga to you ripping? Like, that's the exact opposite. Like, this is exactly the opposite of what I want. But a comment I made was like, and you built this culture for me to say this. It was, I don't care if I lose my job under Scott McClelland. I will make sure you're not on the team if you do this again. And it was a completely out of line comment for me to make as an assistant, and to make that decision, or even to say that. But the players understood that that's the severity of how much we're willing to fight for that culture.
Right.
And the kid ended up being an amazing senior. I remember that. And I remember because I stepped away out of the year after, and I remember players coming back like, hey, that kid has turned it around. He messed with Drake a lot, but it was one of those, like, he was a great culture kid. Mm-hmm. And if we didn't take a chance on that kid, then who knows what he would have done or where he would have been doing. But, it's one of those, I see him now and I tell him I'm proud of him, but you have to balance that as a coach.
Well, and I think you have to be a little bit aware, too, that, like, a 14-year-old freshman, you got to give him a mulligan or two.
Yeah.
Without, as long as it's not at the expense of everybody else.
Yes.
But, they're teenage boys. They're going to make some mistakes. I mean, I certainly don't want to be judged for everything I did between the ages of 16 and...
Well, I'm 43 and I messed up a lot today.
Yeah.
I'm already in trouble.
I don't want to be judged for some of the decisions at 50. But, that's just part of growing up, the maturation process, I think.
And it's interesting, and I'm not throwing any stones at the coaches that were there at Noblesville before you. This is not the purpose of this conversation, but something that I was intrigued in is I went in and there were a lot of blank walls. There were a lot of empty walls at Noblesville. And something I was like, hey, Mac, what's going on with these walls? He goes, there was just too many slogans. There's too many words. I want my words up there, and I don't want too many. You were very big into powerful words. And it was something intriguing that every year, you found a new message from Kaizen to Ubuntu to that we're always exploring new ways to get the kids to think. Where did that come from, and why do you do that?
Well, when I spoke at Aaron's clinic, I talked about our locker room, and I said we got more junk on the walls. It'd take you an hour and a half to read everything on our walls, And that was not me taking a shot at any of the previous coaches. One of the reasons why I took the Noblesville job was because I knew that Dave McCullough, Brian McCauley, and John Peckinpah were all terrific basketball coaches. So I knew all those kids had been coached. That was one thing that really intrigued. Obviously, they were all three different in their own way and probably different from me. But that was one of the things. One of the reasons why I didn't just change it right away was out of respect for them. Mm. Two, but we did. We had too much stuff. It was overkill. And part of it, too, was an expense factor because you're trying to, and we have been able to kind of redo some of our things in our locker room. I started that last fall, was able to finish that this summer, but really tried to, our 4 principles. And then...
what are your 4 principles?
Compete, be a great teammate, be coachable, and accept your role. And, the accepting the role and the being the great teammate, and we hit hard on about accepting the role. I think that, because it's hard. Everybody wants to, play shortstop and lead off, and I mean, it's like, wait a second, we need you, right field, but you can really sell that, like thriving in your role and things like that. But excuse me, so I kept up a couple things in the JV side, and I'm going to put back a couple things I really liked from the previous coaches, but I wanted it to be simplified. I just thought we had too much. It was too busy. I mean, it would take you an hour and a half, and I'm exaggerating obviously that, but I mean, it was just too much. So in regards to a motto, and I've got a good friend of mine who's a football coach, and he's stayed with the same motto since he's been a head coach, and it's high standards and no excuses, and I respect him for that. For me, we always do a motto that I think is important for that team, because I think you got your principles that you build around that are kind of the foundation of your program. But I think every team is different, and each year's different. And last year was Connected Force, then some. We had T-Square the year before. You mentioned Kaizen and Ubuntu. I remember in 18, we had one, Leave Nothing Behind, and after we lost to Shelbyville, I said, we're changing it. And it was Reach for a Higher Ground. So I think, and I don't know which one I'm going to do this year. I've been thinking about it, and I haven't totally finalized it. I usually don't finalize it until about fall break, because I want to see how preseason workouts are going. I have Steve Bennett, former Newcastle coach, come over, and he always gives me some things to think about, and I'm jotting things down, and it's like, okay, yeah. I've got some ideas for this year. I think that's important. I think the guys like that. Last year, for example, we lost. We weren't any good. I mean, and quite frankly, we were so poorly coached, and that was my fault. Earlier in the year, and we lost a terrible game to Brebeuf, and afterwards we had to play in our own tournament the earlier game. Yeah. But I remember coming back in and meeting with the kids, and we went back to our motto for this year, and I was like, is this just words that we just put on a shirt and everybody thinks it looks neat, or does this really mean something? And we talked about it, and I think it helped kind of steer us back in the right direction. We were able to get on a little bit of a roll then. But, I think sometimes, too, some of the best lessons are the hard ones.
Yeah.
And, I don't think anybody likes to say, hey, I like to lose, or, that was a great loss. I was so happy we lost. But, I think you can learn a lot. Shelbyville game, I think we learned a lot from that game. Just kind of, it was a good reset, I think, there's been many games throughout the course of the season. But, last year, we weren't very good early on. And like I said, we just weren't. And I'm not sure that, we just weren't very well coached, especially early on. And that was my fault. And I think after that, we were able to kind of get on a roll and get the ship righted in, correct direction and things like that.
Well, and it's interesting, though, because going back to those losses, you have an opportunity to take something away from that. And I remember there was a young man, Chewy, Logan Laster, and his turning point, I don't know if you've ever heard about this, where he was talking, he goes, my turning point when I knew I'd be a good player was when I absolutely had a terrible game and I had Hell Week with Coach Mack. And, but it wasn't, I'm punishing you because I'm mad and I'm angry, I'm going to belittle you. Your whole focus was, you can be higher than what I know you can be. And he's had multiple conversations about this with me, where he goes, nobody believed in me until after Hell Week. And he pushed me, he challenged me, because he was showing me how tough I was. And I didn't even know how tough I was. Now I know how tough I am. And that's when I became a good player, because I knew how tough I was. And then also going back to accepting your role and that's one thing I think that you do such a good job as, that you're not going to put a freshman in a position to take a bad shot or a failing shot, or, unless you get like a Romeo Langford or like a Mullins or a Hayden. But like you're gonna protect your freshmen, and you're gonna put that, hey, game winner shot goes to a senior because they can handle that. The emotions of winning, but they could also handle the emotions of missing. And when you accept your role, and I'm a freshman, that gives you. And I tell people this: the nice part about being a freshman is not your win-loss record. That's the senior's win-loss record. Your record comes in 3 more years, so it actually means something more. But when you would define those roles and you do such a good job at it, we ended up going 28-2, winning a state championship with you as the head coach. The next year we lost to senior Chance, and Chance accepted his role. And I remember being at practice with you, and you're like, "Oh man, we missed this guy. We missed this guy." And I'm like, "I disagree." And you're like, "Who did we miss then, Paul?" Like real smart. I was like, "Who do you think they missed, a big guy?" And I was like, "I think we missed Chance because he was the one that talked the most in practice." And you paused and you looked around. And you're like, "We miss him because he accepted his role. Right. He knew he wasn't going to be the 40-point guy. However, he knew all the scouting reports. He had the bench energy. I mean, you even remember articles about him being the bench mob.
Right.
And so that was just him as a person. And if you didn't have that definitive role of, if you're a freshman coming in, don't walk around with your chest out. Just learn. Take the notes. But yeah.
Well, I think there's such a big difference between an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old.
Oh, huge difference.
And so I think you have to, again, you got to really look at that. And then the second thing is, 14-year-olds, I mean, you hope that your 18-year-olds, your seniors are great guys and great teammates. And like, we've been really fortunate, not just the last 4 years, but probably the last 10 when you throw in our Kyle and Drake were freshmen. Their seniors were Hayden and Eli, and then Chance, who you're talking about. Like, what a great example. So you're able to, you got 2 really good players, but they're great teammates, and then you throw in the fact, Hayden's by far your hardest worker. And then you got Chance, who never plays, and he's just thriving in his role.
Yeah.
So these freshmen are getting to see this. So, and we saw it, we've been able to see it some in Noblesville too. I mean, it's been really, really, really good. I mean, we've got a couple freshmen. I don't know how much they're going to play this year. That were freshmen last year that may have an opportunity to play some this year, but they had good examples last year in TJ and AB and Max and Ryan and Luke. And so I just think all that stuff is so important, just so it stays, so even keel, and there's not the dips.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate with that stuff.
I don't think it's fortunate. I think it's a seed that you sow. Like, you're doing a good job of putting those seeds in, and obviously, I know that's one thing about you is you do a lot of research on your coaching staff, and you're not bringing in guys that aren't quality, and that's one thing I've also taken away. I still remember our interview. I got in trouble because I went to go just talk to the little coach at Mooresville. And so I'm on my way to Mooresville, and you call me like, "Hey, just so you know, you're probably headed to Mooresville right now." I'm like, "We're Moorestown. We're the opposite direction." I was like, "Oh," so I was like, "No, I'm on the right way." Punch in my GPS, go to actual Moorestown, and I ended up talking to you for 4.5 hours. And I left my phone in the car because I thought it was going to be a 15-minute catch-up. And we're talking X's and O's, we're drawing stuff. And then I get home, and this is August, and my wife's like, "Do you think you're going to take the job?" I'm like, "I don't even think I got it." He goes, "Paul, you just talked to him for 4.5 hours. Got back to my car, I have 18 missed calls from my wife. She thinks I'm dead on the side of the road. Like, who talks basketball for 4.5 hours? I'm like, it was just a good conversation, but you do such a good job of vetting the people that you have around you. And that's one thing I've always picked up from. I mean, I've learned a lot from you on the ways. But yeah, and it's just something that you do a good job at. So
I appreciate that.
I know you do a good job at building your freshmen and building the culture. And I remember at Noblesville, I remember the first year was a little rough for you. And even you admitted that, like, hey, there's just a culture shift that they expect this, I expect that. And again, still not throwing stones at anybody. It was just the way it is.
Right.
And so, but yeah. Well, real quick, Coach, you wake up tomorrow. You're the commissioner of basketball in America. Any rule you make passes. I had Gizzy, I had Julius Gizzy on the podcast last week, and he said that he would limit Europeaners to 2. And I was like, well, why? He goes, well, they do it to us. Why can't we do it to them? And so that was his change. What change would you make in basketball at any level, and why?
I guess when I first think about basketball, I would take out zone defenses in 3rd and 4th grade.
No zone in 3rd and 4th?
Yeah, I think I'm being kind of a smart aleck here too, but I just met with our MBA, our youth coaches, and I'm like, guys, your 4th grade record 10 years from now won't matter at all.
10 years next week.
Right. I mean, I was trying to make them feel a little bit better. But I'm like, don't take the top 5 or 6 kids and teach them how to 1-3-1 trap, and 5 of the 6 can't use their left hand. Like, that's just, it's asinine. It makes no sense. So I guess I would probably take out zone in the youth. For high school, one that's really coming to my mind, and we're getting pulled on this. Obviously, the shot clock's a huge topic. Seeding the tournament has become a huge topic, and the traditionalist in me still to this day, there's part of me that I still love the blind draw, and that Sunday night and the guys. I mean it's. But I think where I'm almost to the point, the one that I think it's time to probably put a circle in the paint with block charge.
Really?
For high school. I think that call has gotten to be so difficult. Probably more so than the seeding or I'm sorry, I lost the seeding and
shot clock.
The shot clock. I think the shot clock's eventually going to be here, but I don't think it's as close as what people think it is, because there's still too many smaller schools that aren't going to be able to afford it, and then they're going to have to pay not only by the shot clock, but then they're going to have to pay somebody $60-$80 each game, and I still think we're a few years away from that. I guess from a pro standpoint, as I've always complained about this, and I don't watch a ton of pro basketball, but the consistency and the officiating during the regular season to the playoffs. And I think that's, and I think the other thing that when I look back at high school, just finding some overall consistency in officials, and I think we got a real problem. I mean, I think they talked about. I'm not answering your question.
No, you're fine.
We're just talking basketball.
You're fine.
But I think they did a survey or a poll a year or two ago, and the average age of a high school basketball official was in his 50s, and that's worrisome, and it may not impact my career but I think that is really worrisome for a lot of people. And I know here in the last 3 years, I can think of several good officials that have decided to retire, and you got guys in their 50s, late 50s, and early 60s that are trying to keep up with 17 and 18 year olds, and I mean, how much can they do? I mean, I don't know if there's an actual rule. I think doing away with pressing and traps and zones, certainly in youth basketball, that would probably be my. I think high school. The block charge call and this consistency and officiating with the NBA, and
you just signed a bunch of executive orders on this day.
Right? Yeah,
you got that auto pen.
It's a great game, and
really
it's
is.
still great. And I know it's changed a lot. And now we got 5 men shooting threes. Like when we were kids, the first big man that I can think of was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And watching him as a kid, and with his sky hook, and like he was never stepping outside.
Yeah.
I can, you think of Olajuwon and Shaq, and but now you got 5 men stepping out and hitting threes, and sometimes they're the best shooters on the team, and it's just evolved so much, and it's still a great game. It's still it's a game of just pure enjoyment and team play, and the team that usually makes the fewest mistakes is the one that wins. Not always, but more times than not. And I think we're just really blessed here in this state with the high school coaches, the college coaches, and even the pro coaches who just are so willing to give back to one another. It's just it just makes you grow so much as a coach, and you have so many resources at your hands.
I love it. Coach, I appreciate you, man. You did awesome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Hey, if you made it this far, obviously you like what you're hearing. Make sure you share it, subscribe, give us a like, and we're just going to help grow the game. Appreciate you, Coach.
Thanks.